We often see them in viral videos, people whose sense of entitlement knows no bounds. We're used to their shouting and ridiculous demands, but sometimes the price for having the last word is too high. In this video, we will analyze 6 cases where blind confidence in their own rightness led to a tragic ending. Enjoy the video. A fatal step on the Kennedy Highway. June 2018 was an abnormally hot June in Chicago. The temperature of the asphalt on the I-90 interstate, known as the Kennedy Highway, was reaching critical levels, and the humidity made waiting in traffic a grueling ordeal for even the most patient drivers. But 51-year-old Janet Vance was never one of those people. Working as an office manager for a large logistics company, she was used to having everything around her follow her schedule and rules. Colleagues described her as a woman who always had her finger on the manager's call button, a person whose sense of entitlement often crossed the line of common sense. On that Tuesday, around 5:45 p.m., Janet was on her way home from a busy day at work. The traffic jam that stretched for miles became a personal affront to her. She had already signaled several times to the drivers in front of her, even though it was obvious that traffic was blocked due to an accident a few kilometers ahead. The situation escalated when a blue sedan in the next lane tried to move in front of her crossover, taking advantage of a small window in the traffic. For Janet, this was not just a maneuver, it was a challenge. Instead of letting the car pass, she stepped on the gas, almost causing a collision. When both cars came to a halt due to another traffic jam, Janet, blinded by anger, did something that was absolutely insane from a safety standpoint. She shifted the gearbox into park, opened the door, and stepped out of the air-conditioned cabin and onto the hot asphalt of the highway. The video recording of this moment later became a key piece of evidence in the investigation. The rearview camera of the blue sedan at which Janet's aggression was directed clearly captured her face, distorted with anger, with red spots on her neck from screaming. She walked between the rows of cars, ignoring the signals of other drivers who tried to warn her of the danger. Janet approached the sedan driver's window and began pounding on the glass with her fist, shouting threats and demanding that he learn the rules of the road. But the tragedy was not caused by the conflict itself. To give her words more weight and better gestures, Janet took a wide step back, straight toward the left express lane, which was separated only by a dotted line and was relatively free at the time. She did not look back. She was too busy enjoying her victory in the argument. Footage from a traffic surveillance camera mounted on a nearby overpass shows a silver Ford F-150 pickup truck traveling in the express lane at about 90 km/h. The driver of the pickup truck had no chance to react. Janet appeared in front of him instantly, blocked from view by the cars in traffic. The impact was so strong that the woman was thrown several dozen meters forward. She died instantly as a result of multiple fractures and a severe head injury. A witness standing in a nearby line's dashcam recording captured only the dull sound of the impact and the sudden silence that fell on the highway after Janet's screams were cut off. The investigation lasted several months. The driver of the pickup truck was found not guilty. A technical examination confirmed that he did not have the physical ability to stop the multi-ton truck. Janet Vance's case has become a textbook example of how road rage, combined with a sense of complete untouchability, can lead to fatal consequences. Her story remained in the Chicago police archives as a reminder. On a highway, the rules of physics always have the last word, no matter how right you think you are. Janet wanted to teach a random driver a lesson, but instead, she left behind only a viral video that now serves as a grim warning to millions of others. Shadow on a construction site in Dallas, August 2019, was a season of great construction in Dallas. In the prestigious uptown neighborhood, where real estate prices were rising every month, the construction of new luxury apartments did not stop even at night. For most residents, it was a sign of progress, but for Cynthia Ross, a 48-year-old corporate etiquette consultant, it was a personal war. Cynthia was the epitome of someone who believed the world should function in a silent mode when she was resting. During the 3 months of construction, she filed more than 40 complaints with the mayor's office, the police, and the Department of Ecology, claiming that the noise from the machinery violated her constitutional rights to peace. That night, around 11:30 p.m., Cynthia couldn't sleep again. The construction site was just accepting concrete for the foundation, a process that cannot be stopped once it begins. The vibration of the concrete mixers and the hum of the compressors were the last straw. Putting on a silk robe over her pajamas, she left the house, blinded by one goal: to silence the workers. She ignored the several "no trespassing" signs and the bright orange mesh that surrounded the perimeter of the site. Cynthia was confident that her status and confident tone would protect her better than any hard hat. Surveillance cameras mounted on cranes and temporary supports captured her movement. The video shows a frail figure in a light-colored outfit, confidently walking among the rebar and construction debris. The visual record of this event later became the subject of detailed analysis. One of the recordings, CCTV-4, shows Cynthia entering the technical floor, where permanent lighting had not yet been installed. She is actively gesturing, apparently shouting something at a worker who was several levels up and could not even hear her over the noise of the machinery. The tragedy happened in a matter of seconds. Cynthia, still looking up and shouting out claims, did not notice that the floor in front of her was breaking. It was a communications shaft, covered only by a thin sheet of plywood that was not fixed. When she stepped on the edge, the sheet shifted. The grainy footage shows only a quick movement. The woman disappears into a black hole in the floor before she even has time to let go of the phone. She had fallen from a height of 4 meters directly onto the concrete base, where the fasteners were sticking out. The workers found her only an hour later during their rounds. A medical examination determined that the cause of death was a fractured skull base and massive internal bleeding. This case caused a huge resonance. The Ross family's lawyers tried to accuse the construction company of negligence, but the camera footage clearly proved it. Cynthia deliberately violated safety rules, ignored the barriers, and was in a state of extreme emotional distress. Her story is a stark warning that anger and a sense of entitlement create the illusion of safety where the laws of gravity and the logic of industrial facilities reign supreme. A rocky outcropping in a nature preserve. The summer of 2017 in one of the national parks was a peak time for visitors. Beverly King, a 53-year-old accountant from Ohio, came here not for the scenery, but for the order. She was the type of tourist who spends more time recording the violations of others than enjoying nature. Her phone was full of photos of improperly parked cars and people throwing garbage past trash cans. That day, Beverly spotted a group of teenagers who she observed were being too loud and seemed to be about to wander off the official trail near a deep gorge. Instead of calling a ranger, Beverly decided to go it alone. She wanted to get the perfect shot of their faces so she could have irrefutable evidence for her future complaint. She headed for a remote rocky outcropping that provided the best angle on the trespassers. The problem was that this ledge was officially closed to the public due to soil erosion. Beverly saw the barrier chain and the big yellow sign, "Danger, Unstable Rock," but probably thought these warnings were for foolish teenagers and not for a responsible citizen like her. The video recording of this moment was made by accident. One of the tourists, who was on a safe observation deck across the street, was filming a panorama of the mountains with his GoPro. In the background of the recording, Beverly King is clearly visible. She confidently steps over the chain, holding her phone with both hands in front of her. She is so focused on the screen of her device that she doesn't even look at her feet. The video shows Beverly walking to the very edge of the cliff. She starts shouting something to the teenagers, actively waving one hand to get their attention. At this moment, the edge of the ledge, washed away by recent rains, literally crumbles under her weight. The camera captures a sudden movement. The woman disappears from the frame instantly, followed only by a cloud of dust and a short scream. Beverly King fell from a height of over 30 meters onto sharp stones at the foot of the cliff. She died instantly from injuries incompatible with life. When the rescuers found her body, her phone was still clutched in her hand as she tried to take the same picture until the last moment. This tragedy was a grim lesson that wilderness safety rules are not written to restrict rights, but to save lives. Beverly was so eager to punish others for breaking small rules that she committed a fatal violation herself that did not give her a second chance. October 2016 in Seattle turned out to be exactly as it is described in gloomy novels: an endless gray curtain, low clouds, and humidity that soaks everything around, from the walls of houses to the mood of people. In a quiet suburb where every lawn looks like a copy of the other, 46-year-old Sarah Jenkins was fighting her own war, one that no one understood. Sarah was a woman whose life revolved around the concept of perfect order. For her, there were no small things, especially when it came to her property. Working as an administrator in a private clinic, she was used to controlling every detail, and this perfectionism eventually turned into a pathological obsession with boundaries. Sarah's main enemy was her neighbor, Mark, a calm man who had a single fault: he took too much care of his garden. His automatic irrigation system was professionally set up, but Sarah was convinced that on windy evenings, individual drops of water flew over the 3-meter wooden fence and landed on her author's English rose bushes. For any other person, this would have been the butt of a joke or a short conversation, but for Sarah, it was an act of aggression. She kept a diary of the intrusions, measured the soil moisture level near the fence, and pelted the Homeowners Association, HOA, with demands to fine her neighbor. She was the Karen that the whole street secretly hated, a woman with her lips constantly pursed and a camera in her hand, ready to record any violation of her space. On that fateful evening, the rain finally stopped, giving way to a heavy fog. Around 8:30 p.m., the timer on Mark's plot went off. He heard the familiar rhythmic sound of the sprinkler. Sarah, who was drinking tea in the kitchen at the time, froze. She thought the sound was too loud, which meant that the water pressure had increased and her roses were once again in danger. Instead of calling a neighbor or simply waiting 15 minutes for the watering cycle to complete, she ran out into the garden. The anger that had been building up for months blinded her instinct for self-preservation. She was holding large garden shears and decided that this time she would simply cut the hose that dared to splash in her direction. To realize her plan, Sarah needed to reach the top of the fence. She pulled an unstable wooden garden bench up to the fence. The bench was wet from the fog, and the wood had already begun to rot underneath due to Seattle's constant humidity. But this did not stop Sarah. She climbed up on it, balancing on the slippery surface in her slippers. She could already see the target, a black plastic hose snaking on the other side of the fence. The video footage of this moment from the Ring camera, mounted above the neighbor's front door, looks truly eerie because of its ordinariness. In the nighttime recording, the top of Sarah's head is visible in infrared light, appearing over the fence. Her eyes glisten with gambling anger, and she reaches forward, holding open the blades of a pair of scissors. At this moment, the bench below her makes a sharp sound as one of the legs breaks under the woman's weight. Sarah jerked sharply, trying to grab the top edge of the fence, but the wood was too smooth and wet. The tragedy happened in a split second. Her long autumn jacket caught on a sharp metal mounting hook that she had installed earlier for decorative lanterns. This momentarily held her body upright, but at the same time made it impossible for her to regroup as she fell. She fell backwards, into her own territory, from the height of her height plus the height of the bench. Right below her was her pride, a decorative stone slide made of sharp slate. The blow fell on the base of her skull. The Ring camera recording does not show the landing itself, but you can hear the dull, heavy sound of the stone hitting the ground, followed by the absolute ringing silence of the suburb, broken only by the monotonous hiss of a neighbor's sprinkler. Sarah did not scream. She died almost instantly from fractured cervical vertebrae and massive brain hemorrhage. She was found by Mark only the next morning when he went out to check why his irrigation system was not working properly. She did not have time to cut the hose, but her body was lying among the very roses she had tried so fiercely to protect. The Seattle police investigation was brief. A neighbor's camera and Sarah's own camera in her backyard captured the full picture. It was a classic accident caused by her own carelessness and uncontrollable anger. Neighbors later said that it was only a matter of time before her conflicted personality would lead to something serious, but no one expected such a senseless ending. Sarah Jenkins lived her life trying to control every inch of her territory, but in the end she was defeated by the laws of physics on her own property, a victim of her own inability to stop. The 4th of July 2013 in Tampa, Florida, was not just a holiday, but a grueling one due to the abnormal heat that prevailed in the region. Temperatures in the parking lot of the West Shore Plaza shopping center reached 95 degrees Fahrenheit, causing the asphalt to literally melt and give off a distinctive tar smell that mingled with the exhaust fumes of hundreds of cars. As nearly 500 cars filled the huge parking lot and people hurried into the mall's air-conditioned halls, 51-year-old Deborah Morrison prepared for the next round of her personal war. Deborah was a bank manager, where her habit of strict discipline and control over every number was a professional advantage. But in her private life, this trait turned into a pathological obsession with parking lot order. She considered herself the only person capable of maintaining rules where others saw only temporary inconveniences. For the past 2 years, Morrison has been checking parking lots daily, armed with a homemade parking inspector badge, a digital camera, and a stack of printed violation notices that she designed and distributed herself. Her fanaticism ran so deep that she kept detailed logs of license plates and times of her crimes, ignoring the fact that her actions had no legal standing. This activity had already destroyed her relationships with friends and created enormous tension in her marriage. But Deborah refused to stop, calling her actions a public service, even when the mall management repeatedly demanded that she stop her unauthorized checks. That day, she targeted the young Johnson family, who had come to the store to buy groceries. Mark Johnson had parked his SUV according to the rules, clearly within the markings, but Deborah decided that the car was too close to the shopping cart return area. In her opinion, this was a serious violation of her own interpretation of the parking safety rules. As the family began to load their purchases, Morrison appeared out of nowhere, aggressively taking pictures of their license plates and shouting accusations. Mark tried to ignore the woman, whose face had already turned bright red with anger and heat, focusing on buckling the children into their seats. However, Deborah was not going to back down. She demanded that they stay put until the police arrived, which she had already allegedly called. The conflict reached a critical point when the Johnsons decided to just drive away. When Mark got behind the wheel and began to slowly back up, Deborah made a fatal maneuver. She deliberately ran behind the trunk of the car, trying to block the exit with her body. She began pounding on the rear window with her fists, shouting threats, being in the driver's blind spot. Mark, not expecting someone to stand so close to a moving car, continued the maneuver. The rear bumper of the SUV pushed Deborah as she tried to get even closer. This slight jolt on the hot, slippery asphalt was enough to make her lose her balance. In front of numerous witnesses and under the sights of surveillance cameras, Deborah Morrison fell backwards, her head hitting the sharp concrete edge of the curb with a thud. The sound of the impact was so distinct that people around her immediately rushed to help. However, the injury turned out to be fatal. The merciless physics of a human skull hitting concrete left no chance. Despite the rapid arrival of medics, Deborah Morrison died of a massive head injury. The subsequent investigation was detailed and painful for everyone involved. The mall's security cameras recorded Deborah's every move, confirming her aggressive behavior and deliberate movement into the danger zone behind the car. Although Mark Johnson was initially detained on suspicion of involuntary manslaughter, all charges were later dropped due to eyewitness testimony, which unanimously stated that Deborah provoked the contact. This story has become a grim lesson for the entire Tampa community, reminding us that a sense of self-righteousness does not protect us from the laws of nature, and a petty struggle for order in a parking lot is never worth a human life. The Johnson family was forced to undergo long-term therapy after the incident, and the mall installed additional cameras and hired professional security to prevent anyone else from trying to take on the role of parking judge. The August evening of August 19, 2018 in Denver, Colorado, brought with it that distinctive mountain chill that usually fills apartment complex courtyards after a grueling hot day. At the 3-story Pine Ridge Apartments, which has about 80 apartments, life went on at its usual measured pace, creating a special symphony of evening activity. Nearly 200 residents were going about their daily routine. The smell of a cooked dinner wafted from open windows, mingling with the fresh scent of a newly watered lawn and damp earth, while the soft sounds of TVs, children's laughter, and hushed conversations created a natural backdrop to the apartment building that for most people was a sign of comfort. But for 46-year-old civil servant Margaret Daniels, this familiar hum of life was nothing more than an endless source of irritation, a personal affront, and the occasion for the next round of her long-standing obsession. Margaret lived in this complex for only 2 years, but in this short time, she managed to turn her existence into an endless patrol of silence, becoming a real nightmare for everyone around her. Her apartment resembled an acoustic monitoring center rather than a living space. Modern noise measurement devices were placed everywhere, and huge piles of papers, her pride, detailed complaint logs, lay on her desks. In these logs, she recorded every rustle coming from her neighbors with manic precision, indicating the time to the second, the duration of the sound, and the exact decibel reading. Her persistence was so destructive and systemic that during her stay, several families with children were forced to move out of the house, unable to withstand the constant psychological pressure, endless visits from the administration, and threats of lawsuits that Margaret sent out on any occasion. She could spend hours banging on the ceiling or walls with a mop, demanding absolute silence even in the middle of the day when people were just doing their normal household chores. On that fateful evening, she sat in her living room in complete darkness, her ear pressed to the wall separating her apartment from her neighbors, while her decibel meter recorded the barely audible sound of the TV running, which was not even close to the limit. However, the real fury broke out in her at exactly 7 p.m., when the first sounds of a piano came from the Chen family's apartment above, as their 8-year-old daughter began her daily music practice. Even though there were still 3 hours left before the official hour of silence set by the house rules at 10 p.m., Margaret felt herself overwhelmed by uncontrollable aggression. For her, this sound was not the music of a child, but an act of defiance and a deliberate attack on her personal space. She grabbed her decibel meter, a folder with complaint forms, and a pen, and ran out into the hallway. Her frantic knocking on the Chen family's door echoed throughout the floor, drowning out the piano. But the neighbors, who had long since learned to ignore her inappropriate behavior and endless complaints, simply did not open the door. It was this refusal to engage in a dialogue and recognize her authority that pushed Margaret to take what would be her last step. In a state of affect and blinded by her desire to dominate, she went down to the technical room, to which she had somehow obtained the key earlier, and retrieved a long aluminum folding ladder. Her plan was as crazy as it was dangerous. She decided to climb the ladder to the second-floor balcony of the Chen's apartment to make her claim directly through the glass door, bypassing the locked entrance to the apartment. She set up the ladder on the uneven grass of the courtyard and began to climb quickly, clutching the file under her arm and holding the decibel meter in her hand. Margaret did not take into account a critical factor that often becomes decisive in such situations: the technical condition of the structure she was targeting. The wooden balcony fencing in the Pine Ridge complex was installed back in 1987. Over the course of 31 years, the harsh climate conditions of Colorado, with their drastic temperature changes and endless freeze-thaw cycles, had gradually destroyed the structure of the old wood, and recent heavy rains had only made matters worse, causing the support posts to rot and corrode the mounting bolts. From the outside, this damage was almost invisible to the layman's eye, but it made the structure extremely fragile and unstable. When Margaret reached the second-floor level, several residents, attracted by the noise and the strange sight of a woman on a ladder, began to watch her from their windows, and some even started filming the incident on their cell phones. She climbed over the edge of the balcony and, breathing heavily from exertion and anger, began to aggressively bang on the glass door, demanding that this unbearable noise be stopped immediately. In the midst of her hysteria, she piled her weight on the wooden balcony fence to get as close to the glass as possible and see the frightened people inside. At this point, the time and moisture-damaged structure could not withstand the load and emitted a sharp, loud crack that momentarily drowned out all other sounds in the yard. The fence collapsed instantly, literally crumbling under her hands. Margaret Daniels flew backwards from the third floor, dropping her devices and papers. Her fall ended on the hard concrete of the courtyard. The impact was so powerful that the sound of it literally paralyzed all the witnesses who had been watching the conflict a moment before. Margaret died instantly from multiple fractures to the base of her skull and spine and massive damage to her internal organs. Her digital decibel meter lay next to her body, smashed to pieces, recording the last and loudest sound of her life that she had been so eager to measure. This tragedy triggered a massive investigation that revealed the critical condition of most of the complex's balconies, leading to an extensive renovation of the entire property. The Chen family, who were only an accidental target of this morbid obsession, moved out within a month, unable to stay in a place where such a horrific and senseless death had occurred before their eyes. Margaret Daniels fought so long and fiercely for the perfect silence that she eventually found it on the cold concrete of her own anger, leaving behind only a cautionary tale of how hatred of the sounds of life can lead to the last word in a dispute is not worth being the last word in life. These 6 stories are a clear example of how simple stubbornness and aggression can turn small domestic conflicts into deadly traps. When a person is convinced that rules exist only for others, they simply stop noticing the real danger around them. Be smarter. No quarrel in the parking lot or complaint to a neighbor is worth ending up like this. In the real world, you have to pay too high a price for overconfidence. Value your life more than being right for a moment.